Do you hate wandering monsters? Do you hate random encounters? Now, whether or not you do or you don't, what I'd like to talk about today are some things that I do to try and make random encounters seem less random. So, two main ways that I do this are by using what I call programmed encounters or padded random encounters. And both of these, for me, are variations on random encounters. But I'll talk about the padded random encounter or the embellished random encounter, if you don't like the term padded, first, and then I'll talk about programmed encounters after that. So, a embellished random encounter for me goes something like this: party's going on its adventure from point A to point B. The DM rolls a random encounter, DM being you or me, and rolls the result. Rather than springing the monster on the party automatically, I would then go ahead and take a moment while I'm still going through the description of the travel, or while the party's discussing what they're doing, as they're moving along. I will take a moment and figure out a way that I can go ahead and work this encounter to fit the current location, the current mood, the current pace of the game. If the party is wandering across the countryside and you randomly roll Wyvern, rather than have the Wyvern swoop out of the sky and attack them, you can have the Wyvern be sighted circling above. If you roll wolves and they're walking through the forest, rather than have the wolves suddenly attack, start hinting that something is following them through the trees, through the underbrush. Or maybe they see a lone wolf keeping pace with them from behind. This is going to set the stage for an encounter. It may seem like telegraphing your monster, but you don't necessarily always have to have that monster be an attack. That monster could just be window dressing. If the party attacks it, then of course, that wolf will have friends, and that wyvern certainly is not going to give up without a fight. But also, what you're doing here is setting mood. You're setting a sense of place. So that encounter does not necessarily... There's nothing in random encounter tables that says random combat. It's the one thing to remember. It's a random encounter. And just like in published adventures or planned adventures, or even those vague little notes that you write to yourself that frame out an adventure, just like you may have encounters that are combat and are not combat, that are social, or maybe even puzzle encounters, a random encounter can be done like this as well. A good example of, say, a random encounter that would be a puzzle, for example, it's, let's say the party is moving through the aforementioned forest. They've already survived the wolves, and they come upon a clearing. You have rolled some sort of fey creature as your random encounter. So you describe that the path opens up to a clearing, and on a stump in the center of the clearing is an odd little fellow with a mushroom hat, smoking a strangely curled pipe from which multicolored smoke curls into the evening air. That little guy then presents to them some sort of a puzzle or a clue or a riddle that they have to succeed at, or they can't pass. You could even throw in some stakes and say, hey, he says that if you don't succeed, I'm going to make sure you're lost in these woods forever. Or if you want to know, some information on where you're going, I can tell you, but it's going to have a price. And now that may be a little bit too much planning for a random encounter, and certainly you're not going to want to do that with everything. But sometimes those random encounters will just get the juices flowing, and that's what I would call, that's where the embellishment or the padding comes in. If the encounter is, say, that you roll as a couple of orcs, maybe those orcs are standing around talking about something. Maybe they're just discussing something. There's too few of them to really pose a threat to the party, and it's doubtful that they're going to attack. Maybe they're on guard duty. Maybe you're on the edge of the orc settlement. Maybe they're on the edge of the orcs' territory. Maybe they're the only two that have survived the wyvern that the party saw circling on the previous random encounter. Maybe it is that these two orcs are legitimately lost. They could be divvying up some treasure. Maybe they're lamenting the loss of their fellows at a troll that's down the way. Maybe you have a planned encounter that is a troll down the way. You can tie these random encounters into planned encounters and try and layer that and create a better sense of place, a better sense of encounters, a better sense of story. So that's an embellished encounter or a padded encounter. So a programmed encounter for me, and again, this is my terms and this is how I do it, but a programmed encounter is not the same thing as a planned encounter. So for a programmed encounter, what I would do is on a per session basis. I don't recommend doing this any more frequently or for any broader span of time, I should say, than per session. Per session, I'll roll 1, 2, 3 random encounters, however many you usually do in a given session, on whatever appropriate random encounter table that you're using, and then spend some time framing out conditions under which those encounters will occur. This is where the programming comes in. Now, programming could be anything as simple as after the party's next short rest, or at the beginning of the party's next short rest, or it could be interrupting the party's next long rest, the next time the party stops to get water. It could be the next time a spell is cast, after the next combat. Some sort of condition that triggers this encounter. It's still random because you rolled it randomly ahead of time. It's not completely random because it does have a condition, but it is not something that was planned, and it's something that only exists for the session that you're running. After that session, you can take those encounters and you can tuck them away somewhere, or you can just toss them out. Note cards work. Write the stats of the monster on the front, circumstances of the encounter on the back. Maybe even just write the trigger on the front and the stats of the encounter on the back. Tuck those away in a recipe box, if they still have those. 8 by, little 4x5 card, whatever it is, 3x5s. Who uses cards anymore? But anyways, you can still tuck those away and have them for later. So those are methods I use for staging random encounters. Now, there's another thing to consider is the presentation of your random encounter. One reason that people really don't like random encounters, I feel, is that when a random encounter happens, it's kind of out of the blue. It just feels like it's an interruption in the play, and it's just sort of a non sequitur as far as the dungeon goes. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't take a lot to plug your encounter in with some sort of narration, some sort of narrative element that ties it into the adventure. If your party's in a crypt or a tomb or something, and you roll skeletons, now it's easy enough to just have the skeletons be wandering down the hallway, but that's boring. Describe how the alcoves on the sides of the catacomb walls start to clatter and creak, and how skeletons start to kind of sneak and ease their way out of the holes, and presenting themselves to the party. Maybe they push their ways up out of the soil. Maybe they coalesce out of the scattered bones. If you roll a swarm of rats, describe the squeaking and the chittering coming down the hallway. Maybe describe, if it's a big enough swarm, describe the change in just the feel, how a smell precedes it, or maybe there's enough of them that it even causes a change in air pressure to where they just feel this wave of bodies coming down the hallway. If it's a slime, if you roll a slime as a random encounter, or an ooze of some sort, start describing, how the air takes on an odor. Or there's a slickness, a glistening something, feeling to the walls. Maybe the next step that the lead player takes, he steps into something viscous and he looks down and he sees kind of the half-digested, gooey remnants of the last jelly that consumed a victim there. If you're in the woods, it could be that the wolves that you've rolled start running alongside the party. You can give that narrative that as the party is moving along, the wolves creep up next to them, the party responds, starts moving faster, the wolves start to follow. If you roll an owlbear, don't have the owlbear be the first thing that presents itself. Have the half-devoured carcass, or the chewed-up carcass, the mangled body of the bear that the owlbear is actually fighting, come flying out of the underbrush and it hit a tree. So for the first couple of moments, your party's going to be wondering what the hell's going on, that a bear just got thrown out of the woods. They're going to be thinking of all sorts of terrible possibilities. And then an owlbear, which is probably one of the most terrible possibilities you can get on a random encounter anyways, is going to come thundering out of the trees and start attacking them. Its food's at stake. It's already enraged from fighting a bear. And also it's a good excuse to have that owlbear still be an owlbear, but maybe be down a few hit points if the party's not up to the task of fighting an owlbear. The wyvern that you rolled, that wyvern, you could describe how that wyvern kind of sails above, curls above, and then banks slowly and starts to glide in ever closer rotations around the party. Random encounters don't have to be sudden, they don't have to be abrupt. They can be, and certainly there's plenty of good fun for that. If you roll bandits, it doesn't necessarily mean that a bunch of bandits come piling out of the woods. Maybe a tree falls in front of the party, or a net flies over the party, and then the bandits attack. Bandits don't always come straight forward and start hitting the party with clubs, and maces and spears. They're bandits. Especially if they work this area for a while, they've probably got a preset way of doing things. Maybe they bait something. This is the other thing. You rolled bandits. Bandits may not be the first thing they see. Could be what they see is a poor, helpless man trying to get the wheel back on his cart. Now, when the party goes to investigate, they find out that the man is a bandit, and then the bandit's friends quickly join. So you've taken that random encounter and you've given it meaning. You've given it feeling and personality. You made it something interesting and worthwhile. So this is something you can do in any case, whether you are embellishing your encounter, and kind of padding it up front and giving it some meaning even after you roll the random encounter. Or I guess that is kind of embellishing and padding it, but the difference being is that you're presenting it pretty much immediately, but you're giving it some style, as opposed to rolling it and then deciding to play with it a bit before you reveal it. That's what more the embellishment is about. It's not a programmed encounter. It doesn't have a set trigger, but it is certainly a random encounter that has flavor, it has style, and it's not going to feel so separated and disconnected from the rest of the adventure. So, those are some things that I do to make random encounters more interesting. If you have some other ways that you like to do it, go ahead and talk about them down below. Get that discussion going. Like, share, and subscribe as usual, and you can find me in the usual places that are in the description below. So one last note, I am really kind of trying to push for new subscribers. I'm at 70. So as of the time of this video, we're at 70. Trying to get to 100. Not sure what I can do to do that, but if you know folks that are looking for another channel to follow, and they like good, honest, from the heart, simple discussion on the games, turn them my way. There's a dozen channels out there, and certainly a lot of shiny ones. But if you're looking for one more to follow, I'm here. By all means, send them my way. At this point, I'm going to be doing 2 videos a week, one on Wednesday and one on Sunday. I stated this in a previous video, but it's worth saying again while we're talking about new members. Trying to get more regular with these, that way there is something to look forward to. Might pepper in the occasional extra. Most of these are going to fall into the realms of DM and player tips, but I do like to talk about other games that I play. But that's for another time. Certainly want to thank you for coming by and checking out the video again today, and get out and game.